Okay, we ready for number 4? So I'm about to introduce Byron Brown, who's a senior engineer with SDS, and his office is literally right across the hall from me. But it's not like I get a whole lot of opportunity to interact with him much due to his nature of his work. Ed told me it was because he doesn't really like me, but I don't believe him. Truth is, Byron is just, I don't blame him. Truth is, Byron is just busy, not only due to the breadth of knowledge that he possesses, and in part because when deadlines need to be met, it's usually Byron's phone that starts ringing. To discuss a little about BATDOK from a software engineering perspective, please welcome SDS Senior Engineer Byron Brown.
All right. Well, I'll promise to keep this presentation short so we can get to lunch. So, well, we can get started. So I mean, Brett already introduced me, but just quick, my name is Byron. I've been a senior engineer, been working in the greater Pittsburgh area for a little bit over 3 years now. And I currently live in Carnegie with my beautiful wife, Kristen, and our 2 cats, Chunky and Lavender. But that's enough about me. We're here to learn about BATDOK integration. So here's just a quick overlay of what I would like to talk about. So first, I'm just going to kind of do a quick overview. What is BATDOK? So we kind of throw this acronym around. What does it really stand for? And then we'll go kind of dive into BATDOK itself. So, what is BATDOK's approach when it comes to integration? Some prerequisites. So unique challenges, and then I'll leave some time at the end for some questions. So, all right. So what is BATDOK? So BATDOK is an acronym. It stands for Battlefield Assisted Trauma Distributed Observation Kit. So, but I won't be saying that mouthful for this thing. So it's only going to be BATDOK from here on out. So it was developed by the Air Force Research Laboratory to modernize patient care using digital means versus traditional paper records. So as you guys have been hearing throughout this conference, the importance of digital uses when it comes to medical technologies is very important. And that's what it was basically designed to do. So what BATDOK really is just simply a application that holds onto medical records. And it uses and it has a lot of cool capabilities of passing off records to different medical providers and such as things like that. So, it kind of holds, all kinds of different information, and we're going to kind of switch our focus to one of the more digital means. But, so BATDOK basically can hold all kinds of information. There's basically 2 forms of, I would say, major input that BATDOK accepts. So first of all, I would say it's like the user input. That's information that the medical provider would put into, a unique patient's profile of, hey, this person, got a gunshot wound or there was a burn out in the field, and then maybe treatment details that they could, pass on from one provider to the next, such as, I gave this person pain relief, and now, we pass it on to the next care provider, and they can know and understand, what was given. So, and then another thing that it tracks or that it holds to, and then what we'll kind of dive more into is the vitals data. So that's, your heart rate, respiratory rate, those vital things that people need to know when it comes to data implement or integrating that medical providers need to know when it comes to, taking care of their patients in the field. And that's kind of what we're going to dive into, is more that side. So it's how do we interact with or integrate our sensor data into BATDOK? And basically, BATDOK uses what I like to call a third-party a plugin paradigm. So essentially, what this is when an individual or team decides, hey, we want to integrate our sensor into BATDOK, they need to build a plugin for it. And BATDOK chose to use this, paradigm, and I think it comes with several benefits. One of the benefits is that it streamlines your BLE, Wi-Fi, or other custom wireless communications. So instead of trying to do, your sensor goes to the cloud and BATDOK tries to pull it from the cloud or something like that. No, BATDOK kind of cuts all of the middle layers out, and the plugin allows you to directly communicate from BATDOK directly to your sensor. Another thing that this also provides is very minimal GUI implementation that is required for the plugin. So essentially, as a plugin, as an engineer who's building the plugin, you don't even have to worry about BATDOK's GUI implementation. And I think this provides a significant advantage because your medical providers don't need to learn multiple applications for each sensor. So because I'm using sensor ABC, I don't need to learn ABC's app. I just understand BATDOK. If I'm using sensor XYZ, I don't have to understand XYZ's app. I just understand BATDOK. And using BATDOK will be able to use basically any plugin. So another benefit is that this BATDOK, this paradigm also allows custom vital types. So if your sensor, for example, is trying to take a unique approach, or maybe is a forerunner in medical technology, that's kind of like reading some sort of vital that's not, very common. BATDOK actually has capabilities to show that data in a digital way to the medical professionals and people taking care of our military personnel on the battlefield. So another thing, probably the biggest advantage when it comes to this third-party plugin paradigm is sensor ambiguity. And what I mean by that is BATDOK takes a very sensor agnostic approach. And what I'm kind of more on top of that is it makes very few assumptions about the sensor itself. It basically understands that you will have a sensor, you will probably have to connect to the sensor, and you will read data from the sensor. And that's basically all the assumptions that it makes. Now, it does require a little bit more, I would say, expertise and engineering to get that plugin functional, but it does allow a lot more broad spectrum of sensors that are going to be compatible with BATDOK. Essentially, almost any sensor you could think of or imagine could probably be some way integrated with BATDOK, which I think is a great advantage. So I've been throwing this term around, plugin a lot recently, and basically what a BATDOK plugin is ultimately it's a bridge between your BATDOK application that the medical providers are very familiar with and the sensor that will be passing its live vital data directly into BATDOK. It is also what we call an Android package kit. It's also known as an APK. This is basically in the software field. This is a installable code that you can put into your Android operating system. And so what BATDOK will do is it'll take that basically small Android application, it'll leverage it inside of its own system, and it'll use its then it'll use its communication to connect and talk to the unique sensor, whatever that sensor may be. So a couple of things to consider. So some prerequisites. So before we dive into hey, I want to do this, I want to build this plugin for my sensor. Basic Android development knowledge for the Android side of BATDOK would definitely be helpful here. Also, familiarity with Java, Kotlin programming languages, as these are the two major languages when it comes to Android development. Also, Android Studio, integrated development environment, that's also known as the IDE. It's fancy terms for a word processor that helps you write code. And then finally, the latest BATDOK version to help with testing. I don't know about you, but I've yet to write perfect code the first time. It has never worked. So I have to test and test a lot. So kind of get into the nitty gritty of what actually the plugin is and what its responsibilities are. So BATDOK expects basically 4 responsibilities that the plugin must accomplish in order to be compatible with BATDOK and any sensor basically there is out there. So first of all, it needs to be able to filter the devices. And what I mean by that is BATDOK will, scan the area for several devices. It doesn't know which ones it's compatible with. The plugin will have to determine what it's compatible with. Next, it would have to basically be able to do connection and disconnection with the sensor. Are you creating a BLE connection? Are you doing some sort of Wi-Fi connection, or maybe even a custom connection process? Then the plugin would have to know how to read the data from the sensor. It would then have to transform that sensor data into a specific BATDOK compatible format. That's not a very difficult thing to do. It's just, BATDOK kind of needs like a little bit of like expectation, kind of like what it did, but it is still very open to, unique types and stuff like that. So kind of how the plugin and BATDOK will work together to fully realize and visualize the data. So essentially, you have your BATDOK application, which your medical providers will understand, and they will take your plugin and they will be able to install it into the system. It's very minimal effort. Anybody who has any familiarity with BATDOK, how to do that, they'll install the plugin, and as soon as they install that plugin, the BATDOK will instantly start searching the area. And so for this example, I'll say BLE, which stands for Bluetooth Low Energy. So they would so BATDOK at that point would search the area and say it would find every BLE device that it could find in the area. And if you're working in a software engineering office, it finds a lot of BLE devices. But so it will find all the BLE devices in the area, and then it will pass it to the plugin, and then the plugin will then say just have to do some logic and checking and say, okay, these are the devices that I'm actually compatible with in regards to this plugin, and then that information is passed back to BATDOK. Here, the BATDOK user would then see a list of devices, and okay, I see all the sensors in the area. Then they would take that sensor, you say sensor A, and they could put it on patient number 1. And then when they put it on patient number 1, they can select that patient inside the BATDOK application and then assign that sensor to that patient. And once the sensor has been assigned to the patient, BATDOK actually will then go to the plugin and request, hey, please connect to this sensor. And then the plugin would then create its connection. And then at that point, the plugin would also then start pulling data from that sensor. And then it would have to do quick transformation of that data, just because, it might be byte data, you have to convert it into some sort of data that's, understandable to BATDOK and to the user. And then that data is then passed back to BATDOK, where BATDOK will then save that data and displays that data in a way that the medical provider can use it. So one of these things that I really like about BATDOK is that its ability to incorporate live data in a high intensity environment, as we know that a lot of these medical providers are in. And so what I think some of the advantages is that they might have BATDOK on a little phone thing on their arm, as you saw in one of the pictures. And they could be working with patient, they might have 3 patients, 4 patients, or even more, and they could be working on patient number 3, and then their BATDOK application, because of a lot of sensors, start beeping at them, saying, hey, patient 1's heart rate has dropped to this level, and they can move over to patient 1 and start providing life-saving care. And so I think that's really why what BATDOK's really trying to do here is help save lives, and I think that's a really great thing. And this is how plugins and BATDOK can work together to accomplish that. That's a great question. So that's actually a BATDOK configuration. So there's a setting within BATDOK where you can say, hey, here are the parameters, so these are the safe, these are the okay numbers, and then here are the numbers that are being heart rate way too high or heart rate way too low. So the sensors do not. But as far as I know, I do not think sensors have the ability to pass in specifically like, is this dangerous or this low? They just pass in simply, here's the heart rate. So to repeat that question, so is BATDOK looking at the data over time or looking at the immediate data coming in? I'm not sure when it comes down to like how much it communicates between cross different variables. I can definitely figure out an answer for that. At the end, we'll have my email address and I can figure that answer out for you. But I do know that it does have indicators that, if the value is, if the heart rate is low, it will indicate that that's a bad sign or something like that. And how it comes across with multiple vital signs and how they work together, I'm not totally sure how that works within the BATDOK application itself.
If I can follow up. So if I was a developer though, and I created a new sensor and I built my like API and I did my plugin manager, BATDOK would have to spin its data code to know what the limits are for my sensor. So there have to be coordination at some point. If I build a brand new sensor and vendor, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I pass that data, and I can do the communication at the BLE level, BATDOK still doesn't know what my sensors do.
Right.
BATDOK would have to spin code in order to know that they're.
Yeah, that would be a fair understanding. And I think the BATDOKs, I'm not 100% sure where BATDOK is. I think this whole idea of custom vital types is on the newer side. So I think they want to try to get to that area. And I can definitely point you to people who would know more than that than me. So again, my email address will be at the end of this. If you want to write it down, send me an email. I'm happy to help. Yes.
Hey, that's not provided the tablet. That's not provided. They have the backstop right to do this, when they approach the so pick up the data. Maybe the actual backstop.
From my understanding, so the question is, where is the actual BATDOK device in the sense, is it on an individual or is it on the medical provider in the field? From my understanding, BATDOK is a medical provider's, it's a doctor or, a medic on the field that holds the BATDOK device. And then it can then use its sensors to connect to several different patients and then analyze that patients. I'm sure BATDOK has the capabilities that you could have one sensor and you could have your own vitals listed on that. So it could work in both scenarios, I would imagine, but I think it's more designed for the medical personnel. So. Yeah. Yes. medical professional to do that work, right? It shouldn't be a combat medicine. It's not here to follow. It shouldn't be like if that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think that's correct, and it can use multiple different sensors at a time, and you can assign multiple sensors to a single patient, or you can even have one sensor to one patient. You can, and like what this gentleman here just said, like it also, you can have, on your BATDOK application, you can have a list of, 6 or 8 patients that you're monitoring at the same time. And that medical professional can then, change their focus based on the, the dire needs of certain individuals, so. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of how BATDOK kind of works with the plugin. So here's some like 2 unique challenges that I kind of want to address when it comes to BATDOK. So in my experience, it's pretty tight with versioning. So if you build a plugin and your version 4.3, for example, and then BATDOK's version 4.3, and then BATDOK upgrades to 4.4 or 4.5, then your plugin might have to be updated as well. So there is some kind of like long-term maintainability. It is very minor, but there is some maintainability that may be required over time to just make sure that your plugin is working with the latest BATDOK. Another thing that's kind of a downside that I did want to mention is that if your unique sensor has very unique information, BATDOK may not be able to properly display it or give proper information in regards to that. However, I do think that there's it's kind of like that pros and cons of that. So BATDOK, it's one application. Your medical providers are well trained in that application. They don't have to learn new applications for different sensors. But then there are limitations in that. If it's a very unique data set that you're trying to display, BATDOK might not be the way for you. So that's just some unique challenge there. And then I just briefly before I close, I just wanted to put a couple thank yous out there. So some of the members of the BATDOK team that I've been communicating with, Alex Bengal, Griffin Romai, and Dr. Gregory Burnett, they've been very helpful to me. I've been asking them questions and they have been very helpful. So just want to say thank you to those individuals. I also want to say thanks to Brett Geibel here for coordinating this whole event. He's put a lot of work behind the scenes. So with that, here's some my contact information. Please feel free to write it down and send me an email with any questions. But with that, is there any more follow-up questions does anybody have? Yeah. Yep. That's one use case. I mean, I think BATDOK is pretty open to how the plugins work. As long as you have your plugin that communicates the sensor, whatever that sensor's application is, it's going to be obviously unique to the sensor. But it's from my understanding, it's quite similar to that. It's going to try to be versatile, I'm sure. So
Backup is the sensor. Taking all FDA sensors, like FDA cleared sensors, all it. So instead of someone coming in and writing like, hey, their heart rate, 100 beats per minute, they have all this information that is thinking that got added, like this is important. But give it, continue to do that.
But you also have a handoff as well.
yes.
Because when that leads to the building, handoff. What point is the record, you don't have to flip with the problem. That person, with all their information, all the things that we talked about before, this is damage, the on first, so you take it up. What medications were they given? So that's why I was confused on where the device actually goes. Initially, I thought it was soldier. And it's just being a big soldier that has their own backup, their own information, and now for the handle, it goes from where's to where. Provided the device name, but from the other one, so some that thing puts the patient from the specialist and the litter and when you carry it. That's not true. The artery, it's using that expand and for the control, so it's paying for the awareness. So that's the next device. So there's always a physical backlog in the chain itself to do with the patient control.
Yep.
It has to be within whatever the degree of limitation is. If you want to kind of get it. Nothing to prevent it. Talking about it, exactly, does anybody know where all these things are? I think else here. I think it's reflected that you are going to the way we originally did it. And the original, please come to the it's going to take it to the topic, but for you to go with it. If you do the tape, but then maybe I can run it, why I'm doing it. That's it. But the big topics come in and bring along the way.
All right, well, thank you. I'll be around for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and break. Try that again. We're going to go ahead and break for lunch. According to the agenda, we're running just a little bit behind. So I'm going to give us until about 1 o'clock to reconvene. So take a break, grab something to eat, relax for a minute, and we'll set back here about 1 o'clock.